Coming up today, the UN Security Council unanimously adopts a resolution significantly expanding existing sanctions against North Korea for its recent nuclear and long-range missile tests. South Korea, the United States and the European Union hail the new UN resolution on North Korea. President Obama says the world has spoken with one voice against the regime's provocations. First, lawmakers approve bills related to counter-terrorism, North Korean human rights and a redrawn electoral map after the opposition bloc calls time on its record-breaking filibuster. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Thursday, March 3rd here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. We start with the UN Security Council's unanimous approval of the toughest sanctions against North Korea in 2 decades. It comes nearly 2 months after Pyongyang conducted its 4th nuclear test. The adoption has been universally welcomed around the world. Kwon Soo-ah reports.
2270. That is the number of the new UN Security Council resolution, which embodies the strongest ever sanctions imposed on North Korea and took the longest time to be drafted. All 15 members of the Council raised their hand for a yes vote at the UN Security Council headquarters in New York, 57 days after North Korea's 4th nuclear test on January 6th. Sanctions on the regime's first test back in 2006 were adopted in just 5 days.
We thank the United States for having taken the initiative for this resolution and the People's Republic of China for having engaged in the lengthy consultations, as well as all other members of the Security Council.
This resolution represents a seismic shift in the way the Council approaches DPRK proliferation concerns. It recognizes at its core that in order to prevent the DPRK from continuing to advance its nuclear weapons program, the international community has to be prepared to sanction sectors beyond those directly related to the nuclear weapons program or their ballistic missile program.
U.S. President Barack Obama said in a statement that North Korea must abandon its, quote, dangerous programs and choose a better path for its people. The gravity of the growing problem regarding North Korea's continuous violations and the ineffectiveness of existing resolutions is what led to the South Korea-based, U.S.-drafted and China-backed tightening of sanctions. They include mandatory cargo inspections, an expansion of bans on weapons and luxury items, and a ban on the trade of coal, iron, and titanium. They also target banks and blacklist 16 individuals and 12 entities. South Korea's Presidential Office of Cheongwade and Seoul's Foreign Ministry welcomed the adoption, putting great emphasis on diplomatic efforts to ensure the sanctions are effectively implemented.
The government will do all its efforts to cooperate with UN members for a smooth implementation of the resolution, and it will enforce international cooperation for North Korea to give up its nuclear program completely, verifiably, and irreversibly.
There have been concerned countries like China and Russia would not strictly follow through with their obligations under the resolution due to their stronger economic relations with Pyongyang. But with China reportedly already in preparation to follow through with the punitive measures, such as halting the transfer of Chinese currency to North Korean banks, the consensus is stronger than ever on blocking North Korea's access to hard cash that could be used to develop its nuclear and missile programs. Kwon Soo-ah, Arirang News.
The South Korean government is considering banning the entry of third country ships that made port calls in North Korea. The measure is in line with Seoul's independent efforts to step up pressure on Pyongyang. Other measures include reinforcing control of outbound ships heading to the north and strictly enforcing previous restrictions against Pyongyang imposed following the 2010 torpedoing of the South Korean ship Cheonan. They include banning North Korean ships from sailing in South Korean waters and prohibiting any new investment in the north. Now, the maritime pressure is expected to deal a huge blow to the Najin Hassan project aimed at distributing coal from Russia. Last month, Japan also banned port entry to all ships that made port calls in North Korea. And the United States is taking the initiative on pressuring the North by blacklisting key North Korean figures and entities under its own unilateral sanctions. They include top aides to Kim Jong-un and the regime's powerful National Defense Commission. The commission was among 11 individuals and 5 entities included on the U.S. sanctions list. The 4 other entities include the Academy of National Defense Science, the Ministry of Atomic Energy Industry, the National Aerospace Development Administration, and the Central Military Commission of the Workers' Party of Korea. The individuals include Hwang Byung-seo, Director of the General Political Bureau of the Korean People's Army, and Defense Minister Park Young-sik, as well as the Vice Chairman of the Defense Commission. Now, in a related development, the European Union is considering imposing additional sanctions on North Korea. Federica Mogherini, the EU's foreign policy chief, added that Pyongyang's actions were a, quote, grave threat to international peace and security in the region and beyond. Now, prior to its approval, South Korea's foreign minister urged the UN Security Council to promptly implement its new sanctions resolution on North Korea. Yoon Byung-se's statement came after Pyongyang declared its intent to boycott the UN Human Rights Council. It did so on Tuesday. Kim Mo-kyun tells us more.
South Korea called for the UN Security Council to expand tougher sanctions towards North Korea for its latest nuclear and long-range missile launch provocations, which violate UN Security Council resolutions and international norms. At the United Nations Conference on Disarmament in Geneva on Wednesday, Seoul's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se said that in order to completely stop Pyongyang's accelerating nuclear power, it is crucial for new sanctions to be implemented without any delay. The minister said that the regime has conducted 4 nuclear tests and launched 6 long-range missiles in the past decade, calling the communist state a serial offender that poses a serious regional threat.
North Korea's nuclear weapons and missile programs are the greatest threats to peace and security in my part of the world. If we are unable to stop Pyongyang's continued pursuit of a nuclear arsenal, it will fuel a vicious cycle of a regional arms race in an already heavily armed region.
Yoon's statement comes a day after North Korean Foreign Minister Ri Su-yong announced that Pyongyang will ignore any decision made by the UN Human Rights Council, adding that the global body had become contaminated with political point scoring and selectivity. Regarding such announcement, the South Korean Foreign Minister said that it came possibly due to the international community's increasing pressure towards the regime's human rights situation. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
Now, in other news, South Korea's National Assembly has endorsed a number of long-stalled bills aimed at boosting national security, redrawing the nation's electoral map, and improving North Korea's dismal human rights situation. Shin Se-min with the details.
Resolution at last to a string of long-stalled legislative bills. Following the opposition bloc's 192-hour-long filibuster that came to an end on Wednesday evening, Korea's National Assembly passed a slew of bills, starting with a contested counterterrorism bill. The ruling party-backed bill was endorsed with 156 of the 293 lawmakers voting in support of it. Initiated by opposition lawmakers, a marathon filibuster was orchestrated to block passage of the bill after it had been taken to the floor by the National Assembly Speaker last Tuesday. Opposition lawmakers said the bill would give the nation's intelligence agency more authority to eavesdrop on citizens and conduct surveillance on anyone suspected of posing a threat to national security. Just 42 days before a general election set for April 13th, lawmakers also gave the green light to a bipartisan deal on the country's new constituency districts. Under the revised map, the total number of parliamentary seats will stay at 300, but 253 seats will be allocated to district representatives and 47 to proportional representatives. The finalized electoral map grants extra parliamentary seats to Seoul, Incheon, Daejeon, and Gyeonggi-do and Chungcheongnam-do provinces. 5 seats were withdrawn from Gangwon-do, Jeollabuk-do, Jeollanam-do, and Gyeongsang-buk-do provinces, reflecting population changes. A North Korean human rights bill also passed after being tabled 11 years ago. The bill, aimed at protecting the civil rights of North Koreans, will also help defector organizations in South Korea that float anti-Pyongyang leaflets across the border. The plenary session that resumed after a 9-day-long deadlock was not able to put all bills up for a floor vote on Wednesday because of the filibuster. An economy-related labor reform bill and a service sector bill still remain in an uncertain limbo as the clock runs down to the general election. 신세민, Arirang News.
Now, with the general election fast approaching in mid-April, there appears to be a shift taking place in Korea's political landscape, and especially so on the opposition side. Our Lee-ji-won reports.
Korea's main opposition Minjoo Party leader Kim Jong-un suggested the other opposition party to join forces for the upcoming general election on Wednesday.
I propose the opposition parties to come together again. There is no time. We should not think individually, but think of the future of a democratic government and cooperate to bring victory to the opposition in the upcoming general election, as well as the presidential election in the coming years.
An insider from the Minjoo Party said the call to join forces was aimed at the minor opposition and recently created People's Party, mostly comprised of lawmakers who defected the main opposition Minjoo Party. The proposal may have surprised many, as Kim had been showing a negative stance regarding a unified opposition bloc. But lawmaker Park Soo-yeon, who is serving as chief of staff for the Minjoo Party, said the proposal has been long thought by Kim and emphasized the importance of cooperation between opposition parties to win the parliamentary elections in April. The suggestion also sparked different reactions among members of the People's Party. An Chol-soo, co-chairman of the party, said he is dubious about the reason Kim is suggesting unification at this point of time, and that he thinks the Minjoo Party should reorganize its internal structure first. The other co-chairman of the minor opposition party, Chun Jung-bae, adopted a more careful choice of words, saying that such proposals should not be answered with hastiness. Meanwhile, the People's Party welcomed on Wednesday political heavyweight Park Ji-won, previously a member of the main opposition Minjoo Party, and some lawmakers from the Donggyudong faction who were loyal to former President Kim Dae-jung. Lee-ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, the Korean wave has taken off in various ways in recent years, so much so, in fact, that the Korean government is fostering the industry as a new growth engine for the country. For more on how officials plan to merge cultural content with Korea's creative economy drive, Song Ji-sun reports.
Speaking at the opening of an expo called Made in Korea, displaying cultural products like Korean food, crafts, and traditional clothing, President Park Geun-hye said that now is the time to create a convergence of traditional culture and modern technology to create new industries through culture. Noting that over 2 million people visited the Korean pavilion at the Milan Expo last year, President Park called for a renaissance of Korean culture.
우리 문화가 단순한 호기심을 넘어 폭넓은 사랑을 받고 인류의 문화 자산으로 발전해 갈 수 있음을 보여주는 생생한 증거들이 계속 나오고 있습니다. 분야 간 경계를 허물고 우리 고유의 전통 문화에 산업의 옷을 입혀서 경제의 재도약의 기반을 마련하는 데에 힘을 모아주시기 바랍니다.
To promote the country's brand value, the government began certifying cultural products this year, and the expo showcases many of these items. The event will be open to the public from Thursday to Monday at Dongdaemun Design Plaza in Seoul and will travel to Gwangju and Busan in the coming weeks. President Park said the answer to realizing creative economy lies in culture and in bringing together the two key initiatives of our administration, cultural prosperity and the creative economy. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Now, a short-lived uptick in Korea's overall output ended after a solitary month as the manufacturing sector was hit hard by slowing global demand. And as plunging exports continue to haunt the economy, pressure is mounting on the government to introduce new stimulus. Hwang Jie reports.
Korea's output across all industries was down 1.2% in January from the previous month, after going up over 1% in December of last year, breaking a 2-month downward streak. The figure sank again. Statistics Korea says the drop came from a fall in production in the mining and manufacturing sectors, which were hit hard by slumping outbound shipments. Korea's exports plunged for the 14th straight month in February, marking the longest downslide the country has ever posted and the third consecutive month of a double-digit drop. With that, experts say the outlook for Asia's fourth largest economy is dimming.
This year's projection for exports is still not bright, with global demand slowing, especially in emerging economies. And consumption and investment that had shown signs of a pickup late last year are now shrinking.
Facing the end of a temporary tax cut for automobiles in January that was introduced by the government to boost spending, retail sales actually dropped nearly 1.5% from the previous month. And some experts say more stimulus, including a budget supplement, is necessary to prop up the growth momentum and reach the government's 3% growth target. But with regard to using monetary policy, experts are rather skeptical.
It's better to fight against uncertainties with fiscal policies than monetary policies in current economic conditions, because adjusting the key rate has not been effective so far in boosting spending and investment.
So, in other words, people have been reluctant to spend for other reasons like post-retirement preparation, not because the interest rate is too high. The same is true for businesses. They're piling up cash because they lack the confidence to invest under the current conditions, not because of borrowing costs. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you as always for watching. Goodbye.